For 3 years, life on Maple Ridge Lane had been peaceful, almost too peaceful. The kind of place where every lawn looked like it had been manicured by professionals, each blade of grass seeming to have its own place in the sun. Mailboxes stood in perfect uniformity, each painted the exact same shade of beige, like some silent rule of suburban harmony. I used to think it was perfect. My daughter could ride her bike up and down the sidewalks without me ever feeling that pang of worry that comes with watching a child grow. My wife spent hours tending to her rose bushes, coaxing each petal into perfection, and I found comfort in knowing I could wave at most of my neighbors and hear a familiar voice calling back. We shared holiday cookies, celebrated birthdays in the street, and sometimes even borrowed tools from each other's garages with a smile. It wasn't fancy, but it felt safe, and it felt right. Then the HOA came. When we first moved in, the Homeowners Association was just a name printed neatly on our welcome packet. I didn't think much of it. Just a formality. Some folks ensuring the lawns stayed trimmed and garbage bins didn't overflow. But a few months ago, new leadership had taken over. Suddenly, our inboxes filled with messages about updated community standards, accompanied by lengthy lists of rules that seemed to reach into corners of life I hadn't realized could be policed. Every word, every comma felt like it was meant to unsettle, like someone had decided they knew exactly how to punctuate perfection. Still, I tried not to complain. I kept my head down, paid my dues, mowed the lawn on schedule, polished the mailbox, and made sure nothing was ever out of place. After all, peace was worth a few minor annoyances. But even minor annoyances, when repeated, can begin to feel like a shadow creeping across a sunny lawn. Every morning, I'd sit on my porch with a steaming cup of coffee, the aroma mingling with the smell of freshly cut grass and dew-dampened soil. In the distance, the laughter of children waiting for the school bus would mingle with the soft hum of sprinklers. For a moment, everything felt good, the kind of quiet reassurance that settles in your chest and makes you believe nothing could go wrong. My daughter played with her dolls on the steps, her laughter bubbling up in the warm Saturday sunlight. I watched, smiling as she arranged imaginary tea parties, completely absorbed in her world. The neighborhood was pristine, hedges sculpted like green waves, pastel-colored houses glowing in the sun, mailboxes glinting under the light as if competing for attention. The scene felt idyllic, a perfect postcard of suburban life. But beneath that perfection, subtle shifts began to appear, hints that something, no matter how small, was changing, like the new HOA president, Linda, who now walked past my house every morning, her phone raised as she snapped pictures of our property, or how my neighbor, Tom, who had once been carefree with his fence, now spent hours repainting it after receiving a warning notice for chipped paint, a chip that I honestly hadn't noticed. Then came the whispers and rumors. Someone fined for unauthorized garden decor, another reprimanded for parking too close to the sidewalk. At first it sounded absurd, almost comical, until those neat little envelopes started appearing at my door, and suddenly the absurdity became very real. The first notice arrived like a small slap in the face. My trash cans, visible from the street, the letter said. The following week, my mailbox was called out, non-compliant with community design. And then, incredulously, my grass, too long by half an inch. Each notice included a fine, each letter more formal, more sterile, and somehow more invasive than the last. I'd kept the yard spotless, even repainted the shutters the previous spring. I could not understand how I had gone wrong. Initially, I laughed. Surely this was a mistake. Perhaps the new board was just overzealous, learning the ropes. But then one morning I looked across the street and saw Linda's car parked with the engine running, her eyes fixed on our house for nearly 20 minutes. No clipboard, no reason given, just an intense, silent scrutiny. That was when the feeling of unease began to settle into my chest, a slow, insidious tightening that whispered that this was no longer about rules, but about control. My wife insisted I ignore it, said I was overthinking things. But the quiet tension in the neighborhood was palpable. Something was off. The warmth of familiarity had been replaced with suspicion. Neighbors who once waved with easy smiles now avoided my gaze. Some whispered behind their curtains when I walked by. The same people who had once borrowed my ladder now seemed to regard me as though I were an intruder in my own life. And then came the small acts of hostility. A rock thrown toward our car, the shattering of glass, the sudden escalation from whispers to deliberate provocation. I stood frozen on the porch, mid-shout, watching in disbelief as the serenity I had known began to crack. Afternoon sunlight glinted off the broken mirror, highlighting the absurdity and the danger of the situation simultaneously. Karen, wearing her floral robe and oversized sunglasses, stormed up my driveway, finger pointed like a weapon. Her anger was raw, unfiltered. I stood at the door, arms crossed, trying to maintain composure, feeling every muscle in my face tense with disbelief. Neighbor Greg watered his plants next door, peeking nervously. Every shouted word, every accusation seemed designed to make me question not only my actions but my right to exist peacefully in my own home. The confrontation stretched longer than it should, each second a hammer against the fragile calm I had built. Night fell, but sleep did not. I stood on the porch under the cold glow of the porch light, staring at a printed photo of my own porch, taped to my mailbox and marked with red circles and notes declaring it non-compliant. My reflection in the glass seemed foreign, tinged with fear and growing anger. Behind me, Karen's house loomed, one window dimly lit, a curtain slightly parted. I could almost feel her gaze. This was no longer oversight. It was surveillance. The tension gnawed at me relentlessly, a predator in the quiet suburban night. Bright afternoon sun could not erase the chill in my gut. Greg opened his front door, coffee in hand, his expression a mixture of confusion and hesitation. Karen stood there, her smile warm and disarming, perfectly rehearsed. Behind her, Sandra, unaware, held her doll tightly, caught in the middle of an invisible trap. Karen's deception was a masterclass in manipulation. Every gesture, every word carefully designed to make Greg comply without realizing he was aiding her. The atmosphere was cinematic, thick with tension, every frame a study in innocence versus duplicity. I could no longer contain it. Every suppressed emotion exploded as I stormed toward Karen's porch, fists clenched, jaw tight. The sky mirrored my rage, gray clouds rolling with heavy tension. Neighbors peered anxiously from windows. Karen, smirking, arms crossed, stood ready for confrontation, her pastel suit a stark contrast to the storm of emotions I carried. Each step felt like an eternity, every heartbeat a drumbeat of righteous fury. Police lights splashed red and blue across the neighborhood, shattering the eerie tension. Karen was handcuffed, shouting furiously, while officers maintained calm control beside her. I held Sandra close, feeling her trembling and watching her small shaved head in the stark, flashing light. Neighbors gathered at a distance, whispering in disbelief. Justice and tragedy intertwined in a single moment, raw and unforgettable. Inside the small courtroom, the air was thick with anticipation. Karen sat at the defense table, glaring in humiliation. I stood across from her with calm resolve, presenting evidence meticulously. Behind me, Sandra clutched her doll beside Greg, both silent witnesses to the weight of consequence. The judge's stern gaze cut through the room, finality hanging heavy. This was the moment everything shifted, the moral arc bending firmly toward resolution. Months later, Karen's house sat abandoned, its lawn overgrown, a crooked for sale sign leaning against the gate. The neighborhood bathed in soft morning light seemed to breathe again. The HOA banner was gone. Driving slowly past, Sandra in the back seat, I felt a quiet sense of victory. Her hair growing back, sunlight catching her smile, a small miracle of return to normalcy. The final scene closed gently. Sunset painted our porch in warm gold as Sandra and I shared ice cream. Calm returned to our faces, our home peaceful once more. The trimmed lawn and swaying trees whispered serenity. In the distance, Greg waved from his yard, a reminder that life, patience, and quiet resilience had restored harmony. The neighborhood exhaled, and so did we.